Hey everybody, it is First Alert Chief Meteorologist Jenn Valdez. Wanted to get all our things in order here to give you an extensive update on the hurricane, where it's going, and how it's going to impact North Georgia. Idalia is a Category 1 hurricane, and it is expected to have devastating impacts across the Florida Gulf Coast, but also impacts in South Georgia, the Georgia coast, and even the South Carolina coast. So let's give you the very latest where the storm is right now. We're going to give you the very latest track and what it's going to do for Florida, Georgia, and the South Carolina, North Carolina coast. It is a hurricane, a Category 1 hurricane with 90-mile-an-hour winds, moving north at 15 miles an hour. It is expected to rapidly intensify as we head through the afternoon. So this is going to become a major hurricane before making landfall. That is still in the forecast for it to be a major hurricane, expected to be a Category 2 with wind gusts of over 100 miles an hour here within the next several hours. Then as it approaches the Big Bend of Florida, expected to be a Category 3 hurricane. It is expected to make landfall early Wednesday morning. It could be as early as 5 a.m., as late as 9 a.m., but in that morning time frame as a strong Category 3 hurricane with 125-mile-an-hour winds. Keep in mind, if this has 130-mile-an-hour winds, that will be a Category 4 hurricane. So this is forecast to be a strong Category 3, and I would not be surprised even if it was a Cat 4 as it made landfall over the Big Bend of Florida. Expected to still be a hurricane as it moves through the Florida Panhandle, and even in Valdosta in South Georgia, expected to be a Category 1 hurricane with hurricane force winds, and then it will be a tropical storm as it skirts across coastal Georgia, coastal South Carolina, extensive impacts across the entire Georgia coast and the entire South Carolina coast. Then it's going to move out into the Atlantic, but long-range models have it doing a loop-de-loop in the Atlantic, so we'll have to watch after this weekend to see if possibly Idalia gets closer to the east coast of the U.S. as we head into early next week. But there you see it moving through Florida, along the Georgia coast, the South Carolina coast, before moving out to sea. Now, it is going to be a fast mover, so that's good news. Although it will bring very heavy rain, at least it will move through quickly. Here's a look at our hour-by-hour timeline. This is for impacts in North Georgia, and I want to point out that although we'll see some rain from the outer bands in the metro, notice the biggest impacts, the highest rainfall totals, the heaviest downpours. Those are going to be in southeast Georgia and through the upstate of South Carolina into the South Carolina coast. So yes, we'll see some impacts in North Georgia, but they will be minimal. The biggest impacts are going to be in southeastern areas of the metro. So Pike, Lamar, Upson County, Jasper, Putnam, Greene, Oglethorpe, Clark, Oconee County. That's where we could see some of the heavier rain bands. But here in the metro, it's going to be more isolated and few and far between. About a 50% chance of rain tomorrow. Here's a look at Wednesday's rainfall totals. And again, this is very consistent with where you had those highest rainfall chances. In metro Atlanta, most areas seeing a trace of rain from the storm. But then you look at Jasper, Putnam County could see an inch of rain from the storm. And then south and east of our viewing area, across middle and south Georgia, that's where you're looking at 4 or 5+ inch rainfall totals. So the closer you are to the storm, the higher the impacts and the higher the rainfall totals. The further you are from the center of the storm, the smaller the impacts, the lower the rainfall totals. As far as the wind goes, this storm is pretty compact here, and you're going to see the strongest winds closest to the center of circulation. So we're going to show you those winds here in a minute. But first I want to point out, again, rainfall totals highest south and east of metro Atlanta. So here's that wind forecast. Wherever you see red, that is hurricane force winds. Now, the hurricane force winds, they only extend about 15 miles from the center of the storm. So that is why it is so imperative where this makes landfall, where that center of the storm is where we're going to see the greatest impact. So hurricane force winds, which is 74-mile-an-hour winds or higher, that is only about 15 miles from the center of the storm. Tropical storm force winds, on the other hand, that's winds over 39 miles an hour. Those extend 160 miles from the center of the storm. So the further you are from the storm, again, the lower the impacts. The closer to the center, the higher the impacts. And those hurricane force winds are going to be along that Big Bend of Florida, but even moving through the Florida Panhandle around Live Oak, around Valdosta, we are expecting hurricane hurricane force winds, even as far south as South Georgia. So Valdosta will see hurricane force winds. And then as we head to the Georgia coast, we're going to see tropical storm force winds. Could see some isolated bursts of hurricane force wind gusts, but most areas along the coast, and as you can see, pretty much the entire Georgia coast, could see tropical storm force winds of 39 miles an hour. Now, this storm is going to go over very heavily wooded areas, so this is going to create major power outages across Florida and Georgia, and that's going to be a big problem with this storm. Ian moved through, obviously a lot of damage, but it wasn't as heavily wooded. On the other hand, this storm is moving over a heavily wooded area. Of course, the more people that lose power, the more these power crews have to work to restore power, the longer it's going to take. So we could see people without power for a very long time, of course, dependent on the amount of damage. But with a Category 3 storm, a major hurricane, very possibly to see extensive damage, not only in Florida, but as you can see, south and middle Georgia is going to feel impacts from wind damage as well. Then even South Carolina, moving into Columbia, Charleston, we'll see tropical storm force winds as this continues to move out. So here in Atlanta, we will see some storms. I'm going to back up here. I want to take you back to where this hurricane is located to give you the very latest. We are going backwards. And there it is, 90-mile-an-hour winds, again, still in the Gulf of Mexico. It's about 130 miles away from dry Tortugas. We're going to continue to watch this storm. Again, it's undergoing rapid intensification right now. Hurricane hunters are going into this storm. We're getting new model data constantly, so we're fine-tuning this forecast. But I do want to point out that the models are very consistent on where they are expecting landfall from this hurricane. So very consistent that this is going to make landfall over the Big Bend of Florida. Very consistent that this is going to be most likely a major Category 3 hurricane, and also that path that it's going to take that turn to the northeast and move over South Georgia. Biggest impacts in Georgia will be over South and Middle Georgia, but even in North Georgia, in the Atlanta metro, we'll see wind gusts up to 20 miles an hour, and we will see some of those outer rain bands. So even some rain here in North Georgia, but the biggest impacts will be by far in Florida and along the Georgia coast. We have crews here, Atlanta News First, going to the Georgia coast, to the Florida coast. We're going to be providing you live updates around the clock from those folks that are on the ground assessing the damage, seeing what's going to happen as this storm rolls through. Make sure you join us tomorrow morning on Atlanta News First, because we are going to be having reporters live on the scene as the storm rolls in to the Florida coast. So a lot happening. We have a brand new update and advisory coming up at 5 o'clock from the National Hurricane Center. That's going to be an updated track. Also, they're going to update the wind speed at landfall. So we're going to get brand new data, brand new at 5 o'clock. So make sure you join us live at 5 as well for that brand new cone that we're going to have for you. We're going to leave you with a look at Idalia here, again, churning in the very warm bath-like waters of the Gulf of Mexico. It is about 130 miles of the dry Tortugas, and it is expected to be a Category 2 hurricane later tonight, and then a Category 3 as it makes landfall later on today. Make sure you stay with Atlanta News First. We are watching this around the clock, and we'll keep you safe and updated as this dangerous, life-changing storm approaches.